Hello, friends. Some borders look quiet on the map, but in reality, they are never truly calm. They only move between two states, visible fire and invisible tension. The Israel-Lebanon border is one of those borders. And right now, that border is heating up again in a way that is making the entire Middle East nervous. Not because this is a completely new war, but because it is exactly the kind of flare-up that can pull multiple fronts together at the same time. When people hear Israel-Hezbollah strikes, many think of it as just another border exchange. Rockets from one side, airstrikes from the other, then a pause, then more retaliation. But that view misses the real danger. The real danger is not the strike you can see on television. The real danger is the strategic logic underneath it. The logic that turns one front into regional spillover. And that is exactly what makes this moment so serious. Because this front is not just about a border. It is about a chain reaction. A strike on one side does not stay only on one side. It sends a message to Beirut, to Tel Aviv, to Tehran, to Washington, and to every armed group watching the region. To understand why this front is so dangerous, you first have to understand what Hezbollah is. Hezbollah is not simply a militia firing rockets from southern Lebanon. It is one of the most powerful armed non-state actors in the world. It is deeply rooted inside Lebanon's political and security structure, but it is also part of a wider regional network aligned with Iran. That means every strike involving Hezbollah is never only about one militia. It is also about Iran's regional strategy, Lebanon's internal weakness, and Israel's effort to reshape the military balance on its northern border. And this is where the situation becomes much bigger than a headline like cross-border clashes. Because Lebanon is not an empty battlefield. It is already a fragile country. For years, it has been carrying economic collapse, political paralysis, damaged infrastructure, and a deeply exhausted population. So, when this front flares up, the consequences are not limited to military positions. Civilians pay first. Displacement begins quickly. Roads become unsafe. Markets panic. Schools shut. Daily life starts collapsing. Now pause and think about what that means. This is not just escalation. This is pressure on a society that was already close to breaking point. And yet the military logic keeps moving toward more escalation, not less. Why? Because both sides believe they are acting defensively from their own perspective. Hezbollah believes it cannot stay passive while regional allies are under pressure and while Israel keeps striking. Israel believes Hezbollah's rockets, drones, and border attacks make any return to quiet impossible unless Hezbollah is pushed back more forcefully. Once both sides define escalation as self-defense, the ladder becomes very easy to climb and very hard to come down from. That is the central problem of this front. Not just hate, not just ideology, not just revenge, but mirror logic. Each side believes the next strike is necessary because of the strike before it, and when that mirror logic combines with a wider regional war environment, the danger multiplies. Because then the conflict stops behaving like one front and starts behaving like a network. That is why geography matters so much here. Southern Lebanon is close enough to northern Israel that rockets, drones, artillery, and airstrikes create a constant cycle of disruption. But once strikes move beyond the narrow border zone and start reaching politically symbolic areas, the meaning changes. A border strike says, "We are retaliating." A deeper strike says, "We can widen this whenever we want." And once that message is sent, the region starts asking a different question. Not, will there be another exchange? But, how far can this go? Will it stay limited to Lebanon and Israel? Will Iran become more directly involved? Will Iraq-based militias increase pressure? Will U.S. assets become more exposed? Will Lebanon be dragged into a longer war than it can survive? These are not theoretical questions anymore. They are already built into the way this crisis is unfolding. This is why the phrase, regional spillover, matters so much. Spillover does not mean one dramatic moment where every country joins a formal war overnight. Spillover is slower than that, and more dangerous. It means separate conflicts begin feeding each other. A strike in one country triggers a response somewhere else. A militia in one theater acts because of pressure in another theater. A political message in Tehran changes battlefield behavior in Lebanon. A response by Israel changes calculations far beyond the northern border. That is how regional wars grow today. Not always through official declarations, but through connected escalation. And the Lebanon front is one of the easiest places for that escalation to accelerate, because it sits at the meeting point of three powerful forces at once: Israel's northern security doctrine, Hezbollah's deterrence logic, Iran's wider regional strategy. When these three collide, Lebanon becomes more than a front line. It becomes a fuse. And that fuse is dangerous not only because of military strength, but because of political weakness. Lebanon, as a state, does not fully control the most powerful armed actor operating from its own territory. That creates a terrifying contradiction. Lebanon pays the price of escalation, but Lebanon does not fully control the trigger of escalation. And once a country is trapped in that contradiction, its civilians become hostages to strategies they did not design. This is why the latest flare-up matters so much. Not because it is the first exchange, not because it is the first strike, but because it shows how quickly the northern front can shift from managed confrontation to regional ignition. If you want to understand why the Lebanon front keeps flaring up, you have to understand one uncomfortable truth. Both sides think escalation protects them, and that is exactly why escalation keeps getting worse. From the outside, the logic looks insane. Hezbollah fires rockets and drones, even though it knows Israel has far greater air power and can hit Lebanon much more destructively. Israel widens strikes, even though it knows every expansion increases the chance of a broader regional response. So, why do both sides keep climbing? Because neither side sees itself as causing chaos. Each side sees itself as preventing a worse future. That is the trap. For Hezbollah, the logic begins with deterrence and identity. Hezbollah does not see itself only as a Lebanese armed group defending a few villages near the border. It sees itself as part of a broader resistance network aligned with Iran. That means every strike is not only about immediate military effect. It is also a signal. We are still active, we can still impose costs, and we cannot be ignored. In that mindset, not responding can feel more dangerous than responding, because passivity can look like weakness. And weakness, in the language of armed deterrence, invites more pressure. So from Hezbollah's perspective, firing rockets is not only about damage. It is about preserving relevance, preserving deterrence, and preserving its image as a force that can still shape events. Now look at it from the Israeli side. Israel does not see Hezbollah as a symbolic threat. It sees Hezbollah as one of the most heavily armed non-state enemies on its border, with rockets, drones, trained fighters, and deep Iranian support. In Israeli strategic thinking, allowing Hezbollah to keep firing without major cost is also dangerous. It creates the impression that Israel can be pressured from the north without reshaping the balance. So Israel's logic becomes just as harsh. If we do not hit harder now, we may pay more later. That is why both sides are trapped in the same sentence. If we show restraint now, we may suffer more later. This is the psychological engine of escalation. Now, deterrence is supposed to prevent war. But on this front, deterrence often produces the exact opposite. Why? Because deterrence only works when both sides believe escalation will hurt them more than it helps them. On the Lebanon front, both sides often believe the reverse. Hezbollah believes not responding weakens deterrence. Israel believes not responding decisively weakens deterrence. So deterrence stops acting like a brake. It starts acting like a trigger. That is why this border is so dangerous. not because violence is constant every single day, but because violence is always available as a rational option for both sides. Now, geography changes the psychology too. If conflict stays limited to narrow border strips, people still imagine that it is contained. But once strikes move deeper, once major roads, infrastructure, urban neighborhoods, or politically symbolic areas are hit, the message changes. A strike near the border says, "We are retaliating." A strike deeper inside says, "We can widen this whenever we choose." And once that message is sent, local escalation becomes regional anxiety. Because now every actor starts recalculating, will Hezbollah answer bigger? Will Israel widen again? Will Iran allow its network to look weak? Will Iraqi militias intensify? Will the United States become more exposed? This is what makes the Lebanon front so unstable. It is not only a battlefield, it is a signaling arena. And signaling wars are dangerous because each side wants to send strength without triggering total war. But the line between showing strength and triggering something bigger is often thin and unclear. Another reason this front is so difficult to calm is that Israel and Hezbollah do not define success in the same way. Israel often measures success by degrading capability, destroying launch sites, hitting commanders, disrupting movement, raising military costs, and pushing Hezbollah away from the border. Hezbollah often measures success by endurance, still firing, still surviving, still proving that it cannot be politically erased or militarily silenced. That means both sides can claim success inside the same crisis while the region becomes objectively more dangerous. Israel says we hit them hard. Hezbollah says we are still here. And because both narratives can survive at the same time, neither side feels immediate pressure to step back. Now add Iran to the picture, and the situation becomes even more complicated. Hezbollah is not operating in a vacuum. Every Hezbollah move is watched in Tehran, in Baghdad, in Damascus, in Washington, and in Tel Aviv. That means de-escalation is no longer a local decision. It becomes part of a larger regional equation. And once outside actors are watching for signs of strength or weakness, restraint becomes politically expensive. That is the deepest irony of all. Both sides say they want security. Hezbollah says it is defending against Israeli pressure and standing with a broader resistance front. Israel says it is defending its northern border and